I don't know how it's been 3 months since I've sat down and done a wrap up, but it has been. So let me catch you up on what I've read in the past 3 months. Hi, hello, my name is Kat. Welcome back if you've been to my channel before. We talk about books on my channel, and I'm so glad that you clicked on my video. I hope you hang out and choose to stay. For today's video, we're gonna be talking about all the books that I read in May, June, July, but it's gonna be chill. We're just hanging out, we're talking about books. Something about wrap-ups are just so intimidating to me. I'm just trying to come at this at a very chill, let's hang out and talk about books. No pressure. That's what I'm trying to tell myself. So without further ado, let's jump into these books and see how much I actually remember from them. This is gonna be fun. I have my iPad here. Some of these books I don't have the physical copies of because I either listened to it on audio, got it from the library, and a few of them I actually let my friend borrow, so I don't have them currently. But I use Storygraph to track all my reading, so I'm going to look on Storygraph and we will just start from May. The very first book that I finished was Women Talking by Miriam Toews. I did this as a buddy read with Kat. This is the second Miriam Toews book that I've read, so I'm excited to continue reading from her backlist. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was such an interesting way to cover this topic. We're basically following these women in a Mennonite community in Bolivia. These women are waking up the next day and they're finding bruises on their body and they're not sure what's going on and what's happening in the night. And they find out that men in the community have been drugging them in the middle of the night while they're sleeping and taking advantage of the women, sexually abusing them. And it's just a very horrible thing that's happened to them. So they are currently meeting to figure out what they want to do. Do they want to stay and fight? Do they want to leave? Do they want to do nothing? The men have been moved out of the colony because they were concerned for the men that the women were going to do something. So they have a day or two to decide what they want to do. The way that this is written is it's in the form of meeting minutes. The person that's taking the meeting notes is August, and he was kicked out of the colony, but he decided to come back and he was allowed back in. He is taking the meeting notes because he's the only one within the women that can read and write. So he is writing these notes for the women. So we're getting it through his perspective. This was just such an interesting read. When I was talking to Kat, something she said was this is a book of ideas, and it definitely is, where they're just kind of going through all these different scenarios. They've never left the colony. They don't know what's outside of the colony. It was just so interesting to kind of hear their thoughts and their thought process and how they were kind of working through that decision. There is some humor sprinkled throughout that adds a little bit of lightness to it, but it is definitely a heavy topic. It was hard to read at times. And something about this book too is I feel you hear about the violence, but it's not written graphically necessarily, where you kind of just know what happened without needing all the details of everything that happened. And I thought that was a really interesting way to write about it, and I personally really appreciated that. At first, I was definitely nervous because this is written from August's, I don't know why I can't say that. It's written in August's perspective. That made me nervous because I was ooh, we're in a man's perspective. I don't know if that makes sense, but towards the end, I think it definitely makes sense on why that happened. Overall, very much so enjoyed it. Love Miriam Toews. So excited to read more. I think I want to read All My Puny Sorrows next. We'll see. I'm just excited to continue working through her backlist because she's just an author that I think is just going to be an all-time favorite of mine. So this is Women Talking. That's the first one. And the second book that I read in May was Us Against You by Fredrik. Backman. This is the second book in the Beartown series. I did this as a buddy read with Sally, and she so kindly sent me this copy. I don't want to talk too much about this one because it is part of a series, but basically in the original Beartown. Hello there, editing Kat here, just stepping in because I did not do a great job at describing what the synopsis was for Beartown. But basically it's a small town and they love hockey. It's a big part of their community, and something happens between one of the hockey players and the hockey team manager's daughter. So that kind of causes a divide between the community, and in Us Against You, it's just kind of a continuation on the aftermath of what happened. So just wanted to add a little note here because I had a hard time putting my thoughts together for this one, so just wanted to step in. Okay, so back to the video. With Fredrik Backman, I know what to expect when I'm reading his writing. There's so many different characters in here, and somehow you still find yourself getting to know them really well to a point where you do really care about them. So I really appreciate that about Backman's writing. There is a bit of an element in his writing where I feel like he kind of makes you think that the story is going to go in one direction and then it doesn't, and you're caught off guard, and that happens quite a bit. Definitely happens in this one as well. I think that's what makes it so I don't want to put down this book, because I need to know what happens next. So this is the second one. I enjoyed my time with this one. I might try and read the final one next year. I feel like with the Beartown series, I read the first one last year, I read this one this year, so to keep with that tradition, maybe I will read it next year, but maybe I'll read it in like January or February so that it's in the winter time. I feel like it would be a really good read for that. So that's Us Against You by Fredrik Backman. The next book that I read in May, I don't have the copy for. I listened to the audiobook on Libby, and it's called Big Friendship: How We Keep Each Other Close. This is written by aminatou and Friedman. I initially saw this on Janay's stories, and she just talked about how she really enjoyed it, and I was looking for an audiobook to kind of listen to, and this was perfect for that. I thought it was so interesting, and I loved that it was written by two people talking about their own friendship, and you kind of got both sides. You got to hear how they initially met, how they've dealt with things that have come up in their friendship. I don't know, I just really loved listening to them. I thought it was really beautiful to see these two friends and how they've managed to continue their friendship even though their friendship has changed and it does look different than what it was when they first met. I also really appreciated the importance of friendship that was being discussed here, because I feel like sometimes in our society it definitely feels like romantic relationships are the more important relationships. That's what we're kind of told, but friendships are so essential. Really enjoyed this one. Thought it was a great read, and I think they also have a podcast, so it just kind of felt like I was listening to a podcast, and I really liked that. The final book that I read in May was The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. This was a buddy read that I did with Lindsay. This is basically about a Ponzi scheme, and we are following a few different characters and getting their perspective, and they're all interconnected in some way. I thought it was going to be more about a hotel, and there is a hotel in it, but I thought it was going to be more spooky. Like, I don't know why this cover gives me like creepy, eerie, hotel haunted vibes, but that's not what this was at all. I don't think I really loved this one. I definitely had a hard time connecting with the story. Even some of the characters I had a hard time connecting with. I am curious to read The Sea of Tranquility to see how I feel about that one. I'd also love to know, like, if you've read Mandel, where does The Glass Hotel line up for you in comparison to her other books? This one just, I don't know, for some reason I was not clicking with it, and that's okay. So thanks to Lindsay, she definitely helped me through this one. I feel like I would have been so confused without her, and I don't even think that it's a confusing book. I just think because I wasn't connecting with the characters, I just had a hard time paying attention to the story. So yeah, that was The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. All right, now we're going to be moving into June. So in both May and June, I read 4 books. Let's dive into June. So I also don't have the copy for this. I got it as an ebook from my library, and it's This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. I did this as a buddy read with Monika over at Dog-Eared Musings, and also really grateful for her and reading it with me, because I feel like she helped me a little bit with understanding some of what I was reading. What this is basically about is editing Cat here again, because I also did a horrible job at explaining the synopsis of This Thing Between Us. So basically we are following this couple, and they have a smart speaker called an Itza. Basically some weird stuff starts happening in the house once they buy this speaker. His wife then passes away, and we kind of watch him deal with that grief and the weird stuff that continues to happen. So just wanted to add a little note, because my God, did I struggle with this synopsis. Okay, back to the video. There's so much that goes on in this book, and I think it's really interesting that it has that mix of grief and horror together and combined. I do feel like at points it felt like the story was a little bit long, and I feel like it could have been cut back down a little bit, because I feel like there was like 2 or 3 times where I was like, oh, okay, it's gonna end soon. and then it didn't, something else would happen. So yeah, there was a lot of like different things that happened in this book. Overall, I really enjoyed it, and it definitely creeped me out. Just some of the things that were happening. Ooh, I can like visualize so many different parts of this book. I love that that's kind of stuck with me for so long. I think it could have been cut down a little bit more, and maybe it would have felt more impactful, because towards the end I was kind of like, oh my god, when is this gonna end? It feels like it's just continuing and continuing. So overall, enjoyed it. I thought it was really eerie. So that was This Thing Between Us. The next book that I read in June was Bliss Montage by Ling. I read this while I was on my way to California, so I thought it was so cool that the first story was Los Angeles. This is a short story collection. I've read Severance by Ling. I really enjoyed it. I listened to it on audio. This did not disappoint. I absolutely loved this. I was so hesitant to pick this up because I know I've said it before, but with short stories, they can definitely be hit or miss. It's just sometimes hard for me to read a story, get invested, and then move on to the next story. But with this, I did not feel that at all. I was captivated by each and every single one of these stories, and I think that's really unique to find in a short story collection. I talked about this a little bit in my book recommendations tag, but there's an element of, I don't know, there's like something that's a little bit off in these stories where it feels like it could be real, but there's something about it that kind of throws it off and makes it a little bit unrealistic. So I really enjoyed that. I had so much fun reading these. Let me see. I'm trying to think of which ones were some of my favorites. I really liked G. I thought Los Angeles was fun. Yeti Lovemaking was funny, and I liked Returning. Oh, I want to reread some of these. There was like 3 times I was at the bookstore and I was like, should I pick this up? No, but there's something about owning short stories that I really like, especially because you can just kind of go back and read specific ones. So I am very glad that I purchased this. That's Bliss Montage by Ling. I'm glad I finally read it. I feel like I was putting this off for a while because short stories and me sometimes don't mesh. The next 2 books are graphic novels. The first one that I read was Thieves by Lucie Bryon. I don't have the copy of that one because that's one of the books that I lent to my friend. I absolutely loved it. We're basically following, oh my god, I forgot their names. Okay, we're following Ella and Madeline. They start dating and they get into some little adventures, and it's just really sweet. I loved it. The art style of it was beautiful. I will definitely be keeping an eye out for anything else that Lucie Bryon comes out because I just loved Thieves so much. It was so fun. It was a great little escape and something silly for me to read. That was just so cute. I really loved it. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit light and fun, highly recommend Thieves. The second graphic novel that I read, and I also don't have the copy of because I lent it to my friend, is In Limbo by Deb J.J. Lee. And this is a graphic novel memoir, and I love memoirs. I'm finding that I love graphic novel memoirs even more. Something about being able to see their drawings, and I don't know, just like that element of the visual to what they were experiencing just really adds to it. So we are following Deb J.J. Lee as they're growing up and what it was like for them in their household and trying to figure out who they are as a person. Deb immigrated from South Korea to the United States, so it's dealing with how they fit in America and just so many different elements on feeling othered. I absolutely loved this memoir. There were so many parts while I was reading it where it felt like it brought me back to being in school and being younger and trying to figure out who I am as a person, the different anxieties that I felt just going to school. So there were parts where I was like, okay, I need to take a break from this because it feels a little too real. But I think that's what's so beautiful about writing, is that you can see yourself in other people's stories as well. And there's something really nice about it where, I don't know, just being able to relate to someone else and not feel so alone. Overall, really, really, really loved this memoir. The art was beautiful. A lot of the images in the graphic novel, I feel like definitely added to the story. Absolutely loved it. Highly recommend. Definitely check the trigger warnings on this one just to make sure it's something that you want to read. Okay, so we've gone through May, we've gone through June, and now let's catch up to July. So in July, I did do a little bit more reading. I got 6 books read. The very first book that I read was Klara in the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I don't have a copy of it because I did get it from the library. I did this as a buddy read with Seiki, and we finally finally read it. I am so glad that I finally read this book because it's one that I've been meaning to read but kept putting off. And I don't know why I kept putting it off because it sounded like something that I would like. And I finally read it and I absolutely loved it. We're following Klara, who's an AI robot, and we follow her life as she's in the store and as she gets picked. These AI robots are chosen to live in someone's house and kind of be their companion. So we are following that story and seeing what happens, and Klara is just so sweet. I thought I would cry from this one. I didn't cry, but I definitely felt something in my heart for Klara. I absolutely love Klara as a character. I loved being in the AI robot's perspective. There was definitely elements that you're kind of trying to like figure out because you're getting it from an AI robot, so it's not like fully clear what's going on. I thought that that was a really neat concept, and I'm so excited to read more from Ishiguro. I'm debating reading Never Let Me Go. I have watched the movie, so I kind of know what happens, but I also have forgotten a lot, so I think maybe reading Never Let Me Go would be good. I also have The Buried Giant and The Remains of the Day. I also own that one. I have options to choose from. I just don't know which one to start with next. So we'll see, but this was such a good first read from Ishiguro. I absolutely loved it, and I love Klara, and I wish I could just keep reading about her. Okay, and then I read Old Enough by Haley Jacobson, and I read this as my book for the reading retreat that I went away on with Kat and Ivana. I don't have the copy with me because Ivana was so gracious and let me borrow her copy, so thanks to Ivana for letting me borrow it. We're following Sav. She is in college now, and she's figuring out who she is. She's recently come out as bisexual, so she's finding that community on her campus, but there's also a friend that she had when she was younger, and Sav found out that that friend is getting married. This kind of brings up some things for her, some feelings for her because of a situation that happened when she was in high school. So there's some things that she's kind of trying to navigate and work through. There was a part of me that for some reason I thought that this took place after college, so I think that kind of threw me off a little, but I mean, that's just on me. I didn't read the description whatsoever, so I went into it thinking that it was a little bit older. So some of it did feel a little bit YA for me, but that was just because I had that assumption in my head. Once I was like in it, I was like, okay, they're college kids. It is going to feel a little bit YA, I guess, but that was fine. I thought it had so many great conversations on the importance of community and your found family. Another part of it that I wasn't expecting was like that conversation on the friendships that you have when you're younger and sometimes kind of growing out of them and that being okay. I really appreciated that conversation as well. So really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a great read to read during that reading retreat. I feel like I was trying to go the spooky route to see how I would go, but I'm too much of a weenie, so I had to switch to something that was a little bit lighter, a little bit funnier. Old Enough was perfect for that. Okay, so the next book that I read was Spinning by Tillie Walden, and I also don't have this book because I lent it to my friend. This is my very first Tillie Walden. I thought it was so interesting to just learn a bit more about Tillie Walden and what it was like for her growing up as a competitive ice skater. The one thing I will say is that it felt like at some points the chapter would end or the section would end, and I don't know, it felt like there was something missing. So there were parts throughout the story where I felt that way, but overall really enjoyed it. I'm so excited to read more Tillie Walden. I really want to read On a Sunbeam because the art just looks so beautiful. The book cover alone makes me want to pick it up, so I'll probably read that Tillie Walden next. The next book that I read in June, I also don't have the copy of. I listened to it on audio through Libby, and that is Open Throat by Henry Hoke. All I really knew about it was that it was about a queer mountain lion. Sam over at Super Bloomper talked about it, and after she talked about it, I was like, okay, no, I need to give that a listen. It's a very short story. It was about 2 hours or so on audiobook, so I gave it a listen, and I did not want to stop listening. Just like Sam, in her video, she talked about how she was doing errands, and she found herself wanting to keep doing errands so she could keep listening. I found myself wanting to do the same exact thing, so my house was really clean after listening to it. So we're basically following this mountain lion as he's living under the Hollywood sign, and you are in the mountain lion's perspective, just kind of following their daily life. It gets a little bit weird at one point. I feel like I don't want to say too much because it is so short, but I really enjoyed this book so much. I feel like it covers so much in such a short amount of time. It covers climate change, it covers being displaced because of climate change. The gender's covered in there a little bit too, with the mountain lion not knowing their gender. I just thought it was such a unique way to do it. I really enjoyed this one. There was a part where it gets a little bit weird and fever dreamy. I thought it was so fun. I thought it was just a great story. After listening to this one, it definitely had me thinking about a lot of different themes that it was covering in the book. I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, but it was really good. I definitely recommend giving it a listen because it is so short. I really enjoyed it. I'm so glad that I listened to this one. So thank you, Sam, because this was on my radar, but I definitely bumped it up after hearing your thoughts on it. The next book that I read in July, I also don't have a copy of. I did a combo of listening to it and reading it on the ebook, and it's Greedy, Notes from a Bisexual Who Wants Too Much by Jen Winston. This book was so good. She is so funny. I get so excited to talk about books that I just like jump into my feelings, but this is Jen Winston's memoir on what it's like for her figuring out that she's bisexual and how there's just so many stereotypes on being bisexual. I just thought that this was such a great collection. She had me laughing so much. I love this one so much. I'm so glad I finally picked it up. It's been on my list for a while and I always hear great things about it, but yeah, for some reason I didn't pick it up, and then Kat talked about it recently in one of her videos. I don't remember which one, but I will link it. That's what made me want to pick it up ASAP. This was so good. If you're looking for something to listen to, if you like listening to audiobooks, highly recommend giving this one a listen. It was just so funny and informative and made me think about things that I hadn't thought about before, so really enjoyed it. It's definitely a favorite nonfiction read of this year. And probably, I would say this makes my list of like favorite nonfiction books that I've read in my lifetime. So definitely recommend. The final book that I read in July was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I did this as a buddy read with Taz and Blair, and it was so much fun. I was definitely the last one to finish it. What is new? I feel like I'm always the last person in a buddy read to finish. But this book, I talked about it in my book recommendations tag, and I definitely think it lives up to the hype. This is one of those books that I feel like you could read and just get lost in. I was reading this on the train, and I actually did have to keep reminding myself to like keep track of where I am so that I don't miss my stop. That's how immersed I was with this. And sometimes when I'm reading in public, it's very difficult for me to focus because there's so much going on around me. But with this one, I had zero issues. I was so invested in the story. The NPC section really freaking hurt. That was devastating. I did not cry. I thought I was going to cry for this one. I didn't cry, but I definitely stared at a blank wall for a while. Not too long because I was reading this during my lunch break, but wow, that whole section really had me feeling a type of way. If you've read it, you know that section really freaking hurts. But I haven't even talked about what this book is. I don't know if I really need to. I feel like most people probably know what this one is about, but in case you don't, we're following Sam and Sadie. They met in a children's hospital when they were younger and became friends that way. They bonded through video games. As they get older and they're in college, they both go to school in Massachusetts. One of them goes to school in Harvard, one of them goes to school at MIT, and they meet back up and decide to make a video game together. That's the basic plotline of it. So much happens in this. The one thing I will say is towards the end, the pacing definitely felt a little bit off. I think it could have been cut down a little bit and been a little bit shorter, but overall, really loved this one. I'm so glad I read it. But yeah, this is what I'm ending July off with. Definitely ending it on a high note. This is exactly what I was looking for. I've been looking for books where I can escape. This was definitely it. So yeah, tomorrow. I can join you guys on the hype train. I loved it so much. Okay, so those are all the books I've read. I've officially caught you up. I hope I did a good job explaining some of those books. I know I read some of those so long ago that they're a little bit fuzzy for me, but I hope I covered them a little bit. Now we're in the part of the video where we go through my reading challenge and do a little bit of a check-in to see where I'm at with everything. Spoiler alert, I'm not doing good. I'm not doing a good job at all. I have my reading goal set to 50 books and I'm currently at 36 books read, so I'm doing good there. I'm 72% through. The reading challenges that I'm participating in are the Shake Up Your Shelves challenge, the 10 books 10 decades, the 5 rereads challenge, and 12 books recommended by 12 friends. Now for the Shake Up Your Shelves challenge, I don't remember how many books I left off on last month, but if I have a screenshot, I'll include it here. Okay, so for the judge a book by its cover, I'm putting Bliss Montage by Ling. While I definitely thought it might be a good book because I liked Severance, I definitely picked this book up because of its cover. I needed to have it on my shelves, so that's why it's going for that prompt. I'm also putting Bliss Montage under the anthology prompt. Another prompt that I'm completing is a book with a non-human main character. I'm putting Clara in the Sun there. I think that's all the prompts that I'm completing for that. So I've completed 3. Right now I'm at 11 prompts complete out of 16, and that puts me at 69%. For the 10 books, 10 decades, I am still at the 30% mark with that one. Not doing great. For the 5 rereads challenge, I'm at 0% complete. And the 12 books recommended by 12 friends, I am at 17%. I am still at the same spot that I was. So I really need to step it up and get these books read. So that's where I'm at with reading challenges. I've definitely made a dent in the Shake Up Your Shelves challenge. Oops. Almost lost my whole iPad. But yeah, the other 3, I definitely need to step it up. Hopefully next time we check in, I will have done at least one book for one of those challenges. I would take that as a win. But yeah, we have completed this video. We've done a wrap up and also a reading challenge check-in. I'm so glad that I finally just sat down and filmed this. I hope you enjoyed the video. I would love to know, what are some of the books that you've read this month? Have you read any of the books that I've read? What's a book that you're really excited to read in the month of August? I don't know what mine is, so yeah, I'd love to hear what yours is. I hope I don't take this long again to do another wrap up. It was fun catching up. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for clicking on my video. I really appreciate it. I hope you stick around, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.